We're standing in the Messer Meyer grist mill. This mill was built in about 1873, but prior to this grist mill for making flour being built, there was originally a sawmill on the site off to the southeast of the building. This was a vertical sawmill, not a circle saw like was later used in later years. That sawmill was built because at the time that we were all clearing the land here in Wisconsin. Once all that land got cleared and they started to farm, they needed the grist mill because they needed a way to make the wheat into flour. Wisconsin at the time was a flour state. Dairy hadn't showed up here yet. If you're a farmer and you brought your grain here, wheat or oats or whatever, to be milled into flour, it was brought in this door and immediately weighed to find out how much that individual, that farmer, brought. And he would come right here to his office, which is nothing more than a box and maybe a pad of paper, and he recorded how much you brought, so he knew how much to pay you or how much flour to return to you. Over here, and dumped through the floor into bins, either through those or through this one that was put in later. Now the grain is in a bin in the basement. There's a grain cleaner down there that would remove any dirt or extra chaff that was in the grain, and then it's hauled upstairs with a bucket elevator to a bin where it's stored until it can return to this floor for milling. From the bins upstairs, it would come down one of these chutes like this one here and pour in into the top of the stones here. We have the hoops pulled up a little bit because we've been taking a look at the stones just lately. So you get to see the stones underneath. It fed in through here and down through the hole in the center of the stones. The grain passes from the center of the stones to the outside as the top stone is rotating above the stationary stone on the bottom. As it comes around, it comes out the ends of the stones, and a brush comes around and pushes it over to this chute where the partially milled flour flows down to a bin so it can be carried upstairs again by a bucket elevator and sifted. The power to this, originally from the original power to this mill, came through a turbine. It's a turbine that looks about like this, only it's all metal and it's larger. The miller could control the gates, they're called, on the outside, using this wheel right here. When you turn that wheel, the gates would open, the water flowed in, started the turbine, and the wheels and the stones started to turn. I wonder if we've got an active squirrel in here. This stuff keeps getting knocked down. Later on about in the 1890s, these more modern roller mills had been put in. On a roller mill, the rollers are set a certain distance apart and the grain is fed in the center. It's rolled and cracked and goes out the bottom. From there, it once again goes to a bin and back to the second floor where it gets to the plan sifter. Okay, so we're on the third floor here. So the partially processed flour from the first set of roller mill, or from the first roller mill, is carried up here. Only from the first process it would go into the Midlands purifier, so that the part that you don't want in the flour is separated, the outside of the kernel. Blowing the stuff, the bran and the stuff you don't want in your flour off, then it can go back down to the plane sifter. So the plane sifter was supplied by Ellis Chalmers and then put in by a millwright that they had hired. The way this worked, there's a large weight underneath that spun that's eccentric, off balance. So as it ran, this whole thing shook, I'm guessing pretty violently, and sifted the flour just as you would sift flour with a screen sifter, like kids playing in a sandbox. It hangs from the ceiling by these wooden dowels so that there's enough flexibility that it can move around without shaking the building to pieces. Inside, there's a whole series of different coarseness of screen. And based on the coarseness of the screen, each grade of flour would come down and go back through the floor to the roller mills and go into the roller mill that was set for that specific grade of flour to be reprocessed to be made finer. Stuff on. So now we're on the second floor. The flour from the stones had been taken up to the third floor to a bin. It could then be fed down this chute here into the bolting machine. Flour came in the high end of the bolter. As this rotated, the flour tumbled from one end to the other. The flour came out the bottom and was carried by wooden augers to the center and went down to the baking area. And what we called the midlands would come out the end, anything that didn't drop through the screen, to be, I'm not sure if it was remilled or if it was a lot of times just used for animal feed, chicken feed, whatever. Final stage of the pan sifter, or out of the earlier bolting machine, it came down to where it was bagged. This was one of the later bagging areas, but it's more interesting because they can bag they can run two bags at once. So while one is filling here, you can be taking the second one off, tying it up, carrying it away, coming back, getting a new bag on by the time this one was filled, and switching it to start filling this bag. Now he has time to tie up this bag and haul it away and replace it. So here in the basement, among the various bins and things, one of the pieces of equipment that was concealed sort of here was what's called a dismudder. This was used for cleaning the grain if they thought the grain had gotten wet. This is also where power was created by the water turbine, which would have been at the bottom of what's called a penstock, which carried the water to the turbine. Yeah, there's a lot of power transmission down here, gears, pulleys, belts, to take the power from either the engine that was added in the late 1800s to supplement the water power, and an electric motor that was used to run equipment in the later years. The engine shed was a building added on in the 1890s when they added a gas engine to supplement the water power, whether they just needed more power or they may run low on water. Coney Creek that feeds this is not a big river. The gas engine is one of the few pieces of equipment we lost from this site. Everything else inside was originally brought to this site, and we did lose the engine. We replaced it with another very similar engine, which we'll be able to use to power the mill. It was belted to all of the power transmission shafts and belts to carry the power into the building and into the mill, and power all the various equipment. This is a 25 horse Superior. It was actually an oil field engine, but it's pretty close to what engine was originally here, and runs on propane instead of gasoline. That's the one major difference.